This lesson, we are going to explore a little bit more about the validation. And this time we're going to rely on the server side. This lesson is more for curiosity, and if you already know and you're already fine with just that client side that we did in the previous lesson, then perhaps you can just skip this. So let's go. Let us explore what I mentioned before. So instead of having the client side do the validation here, let's do the server side do it for the maximum length. Like we saw before, right? If I get my console thing here again, what was it? This. Oops. So if we have the space there, 257, we get 422, but we get this empty entry. Well, that's not nice, right? So let's go here and see what's going on. So in the event that the submit button is clicked, it goes here, it checks, okay, there is something, there's no error, it calls create entry. Now let's go to create entry. We go to create entry, there is a call to fetch, fine. Now when you call fetch, we got a response, right? Now you notice that this, even though there is a 422, you might think it's an error. The response was actually successful because we got a response. So if you see here in the entries, even though it's red, if you can see the color is different, we have an error key and some message. Well, this is not a standard thing. This actually could be anything you want for this key and anything you want for this key. So actually this is a successful response. Now, how can we account for that in our client side? Client side doesn't yet know how to handle that. So there are two ways I can think about that here. Well, you could perhaps rely on you could define, right, an output for create entry in a way that if anything, there's a validation error, it throws an exception. That's one way, and that exception could be caught, right? Remember here, we have a call to create entry and there's a catch block. Perhaps we could leverage this. Or you could also do a simpler way, and that simpler way beats us simply if you have the response here, right? You got a fetch and then you got a response, fine. You can just check after the create entry, you can go here and check, okay, let me check if there is the response, right? This is not the entry, it's gonna be the response. And if that has the error defined, perhaps that's something we could account for. We can perhaps copy this and put it here. And then else, right, in the other case, we actually do the entry because it's not an error. We can do this. Let's try it out. Oops, I don't have that anymore. Let's copy this. I put the quote there for 257. And you can see errors not defined. Oops, what happened there? So let's debug this. I'm gonna go here and line 64, I'm gonna add debugger. So if you add debugger semicolon here, it's gonna trigger in the DevTools of your browser the debugger. So you can see because the debugger line, it puts a breakpoint there. We can take a look at what's in entry. So let's look at what's in entry here in my term, in my console. You can see it's an object has an error. And I don't know why this. Oh, I see. The problem was this. There's no message inside the error. And there's no error, right? Because that was from the catch. And that's actually wrong. So that should be what? That should be entry.error. Right? That fixes that. Did I remove the breakpoint? I didn't. Let's make it go on. And you can see entry text at most 256 characters. That comes from network. And this actually comes from the response. Now, another way of handling this is Perhaps you want to leverage the catch here. And let's try it out. So I'm gonna revert this, and we're gonna have what we had before. And what we're gonna do is actually change the implementation of create entry to actually throw an error. That means when you throw an error from create entry, you should expect it to go to catch. And let's do something here. Now response here, let's put debugger and check it out just to see. I'm gonna do this. I got a debug. What's in response? So we got a response here, and you can see there's OK colon false. This means it wasn't 200 OK. There was some problem, like some data problem, even though the request response was OK. That's because of the 422. So we can perhaps leverage this to indicate there was a problem. And let's see. Because we know there was a problem, we can maybe set the response here to throw an error with the response.error message. Let's go. So we're gonna check here if the response.ok is false, right? If this is false, not okay. Another way of saying that is using not. Then it's gonna be an error. Well, ideally we want to throw the error, but the problem is if I throw something, I don't know what the message of the error is going to be, because to get the error, I have to fulfill yet another promise here, and that will be another then, and it's kind of complicated here. So to simplify, one way is just perhaps I want to keep track of maybe has error or something, or error 2, whatever. Let's assume that there's no error initially. And if the response is not okay, you set that variable to true. So why do I have this variable? Because I want to do another then here. And I want to be able to check this and throw an error there in that case that's the case. So I'm going to add, let's see, response JSON. I just gave the name like that. This will be the actual JavaScript object. So I'm going to check if has error, right? If it's true, I can say triple equal true. Same thing as this, because if the value has anything at all, it's true therefore it's true. If it has an error, I can just say throw new error. And what I'm going to put there is response JSON.error, because I know beforehand that the formatting of my error messages, my error objects from the server side is an object like, right, with the error key like that, the message, right? That's an assumption that I made, so you got to know that. So that's what I'm going to do. And this message here, which corresponds to this, will be used to build a new error object. Okay, and when you throw from here, what's going to happen is if there is a catch block in this chain of promises, right? And in this case, we do have it from here, lines 77 through 80. And it's going to get that error, and you can say error.message, and that's going to be whatever you put in the constructor, right? Whatever you put here. And that's great, but what if there isn't any error? Well, if there's no error, I can just return response JSON as is. No changes there. It's just one extra step to check if there's an error. If so, throw that. Now, mind you, the throw here, because it already throws, everything after that will not be executed, so I don't need to care about the else there. We don't need that. So the moment it's thrown, it's immediately going to the catch. Ignore everything afterward. Let's try that out. I didn't forget anything. Here you go into tracks at most 256. Let's trace it with the debugger so you can see what's going on. So here I have the debugger. I'm going to put the breakpoint here in line 35. And then I'm going to put a breakpoint 42. And then a breakpoint in the catch here. So let's try it out again. You see it has made the request. We got it. See the network tab, the third one. Now go back to sources. Let's see, response.ok is false. So because this is false, this becomes the opposite false. Inverted is true. It's gonna be, what has error right now? It's false. So it assumed no error, but now it's gonna set the error. So let's press F10 or what's it called here? Step over next function call. So it does set the error and then it returns. Let's press F8 to go to the next breakpoint. And it right here now, what's in response to the JSON? It's the error with the message. Now, has error is true now. Because of that, it's going to go into the through. You can see here. And response.json.error is the message. Entry text is at most 256 characters. Now you're going to build a new error. Let's press F10 to see what happens. F10 is step over next function call. And you can see it went right away to the catch block and ignored everything afterward. So that's why I didn't put an else there. This is ignore. And with that, it goes to the catch and we can see the error here. If I hover over it, why is it not working? Is it? Oh, it's here. It's an error object. And I can see error.message is that. And with that, it should work fine. Press F8 to continue, and it's there. Now let's test the normal case, in case it didn't break anything. Let me remove all the breakpoints. Actually, we can trace it again. You can see it's skipped this, and it's returning the response. F10, let's put F8, and it went here. There's no error, false, so it skips that and do response JSON. And it goes, and it's there. Let me remove all the breakpoints. So working fine, but doesn't work with the other case. Now there's one problem I noticed just now is we're clearing the thing. We don't, that's not good because you want to allow the user to fix his message, right? You don't want the user to lose the message just because we went over the limit. So that's not good. Let's fix that. So the problem here is where is it clearing? Let's see. So it goes here, create entry, then and then the catch. Because this is all asynchronous, it keeps executing the code here. So what could we do? Well, we only want to clear when it's successful, right? So where's the point of success in this code here? It's line 77, right? When you add a new entry. Perhaps add new entry could have the, okay, add new entry is fine. So we have to move this part of the code where it clears the text error and the error message to inside the then here. Okay. And because of the nature of the asynchronous nature, it will only execute this if it's successfully able to add a new entry. So that's the fix here. Before, it was always calling that no matter what entry, create entry was the outcome of create entry, right? Because as you call create entry, that's a promise. Because of the asynchronous nature, it just keeps executing beyond that. So it does create entry, it's there, it's hanging, it's waiting, and it keeps going, and it was going right after to the code to clear, and then to clear the error message, and then it finished. But the condition to call this now is only and only after the create entry is successful. Let's try again. Whoops, that's the whole code. Where's that? Lost it again. Copy 257. There you go. Now the user has the chance to fix it. Let me remove the code, and I fixed it. It's there. Okay. So let's review what we did. In this lesson, we explored the server side, relying on the server side to validate everything and then just catch the message from the server side and displaying that in the front end. One way of accomplishing that, we had two ways, right? We could just rely on assuming that the response would have an error key and not use any kind of catch block, or we could leverage what we already had, which is what we did just now with the catch block. And what we did is add an extra step here. You gotta have this variable outside the kind of scope to the function. It's a flag variable to indicate whether there was an error. Assume there's no error, right? And then you check if response not okay, set the error to true, so that in the next step of the then, you can do the throwing of the new error. If there's no error, just return the response as is. This throwing will immediately go to the catch block if there is one. Because there is one, here the catch block would actually change the error span with the error.message. And we fixed the problem where the clear was clearing even though there was an error, and the user lost the data and had no chance of fixing his message and resubmitting it. While this is a nice approach, I'm going to revert back to the client side only, so we don't have to make a request. I'll leave this client to check it, so the server is not burdened with that, and the client doesn't have to make that extra request. Sometimes it could take time, and it could consume bandwidth. And I'll leave that here, and I'll comment out the other one just in case you want to reference it someday. So all we have to do is through error and so on. Let me see. Actually, you could still leave it in as is. If you still left it here, it would actually still work because it was just skip everything afterwards, so it's fine. I'll just leave it because that's a nice way we can, the create entry will return an error. But maybe just in case some client cannot do anything about some sort of validation, maybe the server side only validation, something like that. So I'll just leave it. Anyway. So with that, I'll see you in the next lesson.